Hi, this is Andy Oram. I'm talking today with Stephen Friend, who is the founder and the president of Sage Bionetworks. And I'm going to ask you, Sage does a lot of interesting things, and we're going to go over 5 or 6 projects that they're working on and their conference, which is coming up in San Francisco in April. So first I'm going to ask you to describe Sage as much as you can in 1 or 2 sentences.
Sage Bionetworks is a nonprofit foundation based here in Seattle who has a focus on building a commons, a place where people can bring their data and build models of disease.
And from being at the conference last year, I understand you do have a big love of open source, which radar audiences like a lot. Open source software as well as open data.
All of the projects, in fact, the heart of what we do is based on the concept that the medical information system is a rather closed one, and that if we're going to make progress on therapies, on who should get what drugs, but on developing new therapies, that we must look at the absurdity of the current system, its closedness, and come up with reward structures that allow people to share data, to work on projects as teams, and to have citizens that are often on the sideline more involved. So absolutely, you'll find this one in strong support of that theme.
Well, you've got a big job, Steve. You're dealing with pharmaceutical companies. It's hard to imagine more proprietary companies in the world, patent happy and so forth.
Yeah, I actually, you know what I found is that's one wall that the people, I think, go to naturally. But I need to tell you, audience, that the walls that are, I think, pretty well people are aware of in terms of industry, biotech, and some aspects of closed data there are pretty well matched, sadly, by the closeness of academic institutions, where people will get funded to generate data. Those sort of, lily white academics get funded to do research, where then they want to make their insights without necessarily inviting those that they don't want to work with in. So they have this little closed circle of their friends, and then they publish that. And really, once it's published, it's not put out in a way where there's a great delight taken in the sharing. And the other is that sometimes the advocate communities, those that we look at to be the fierce friends of the patients, sometimes they get their own agendas too. And sometimes the groups that are organizing patients start saying, well, I have the answers, we have the way to do the funding, we're going to do it our way. And when you go to them and say, let's make it so the data is freely available, they say, well, we would like to have it in our community where we help the patient. So my point here is, yes, there is issues of walls to closed information that pharma have, that academic institutions have, and even sometimes patient advocate communities have.
Well, last year's conference was really impressive, the way you brought together all these people, the patient advocates, the pharmaceuticals, the academics, and big users, hospitals, the FDA was there. Quite impressive. And let's take a look now at the upcoming conference. Tell us the dates and start in on one of the interesting projects.
Okay, I will. So it's interesting. We call this actually a congress, and I'll say why, which is that I totally get bored by conferences. There are more than there are days in a week. And the Congress is really meant to highlight the fact that the people who are all invited that come together, the 200 plus, are there for the purpose of actually shaping and drafting what can be done. So Congress refers to the fact that this Congress that starts April 20th, Friday, runs through afternoon of Saturday, April 21st in San Francisco, has 2/3 of it, the first actually 3 parts of it, are about understanding what's been going on in various communities that work together. But the last portion, the last third of it, is asking the people who are there, as you say, people from the NIH, from FDA, from DARPA, through to pharma, to universities, to the media, who are there to actually roll up their sleeves and work And the last section, called Next Steps, is where for the next 53 weeks, much of the work that we, the community, are going to do is actually not just chatted about, but actually hopefully shaped. So you mentioned that maybe I should give an example. I'm going to give you an example, Andy, of a project I don't think people know about. But actually, before I go to it, I want to say one thing, which is 4TV is actually going to be live casting all the sessions. People can get onto the website, and also all of them are going to get canned. So 2 weeks after the Congress, for those who can't see this, get interested in this, all the presentations will actually be taped just like it would be if it was a TED conference, and you can click on and follow them. So let me go to one or two projects that I don't think anyone knows about who hasn't been prepping, getting this Congress ready. The first is session 5, which is called Citizen-Led Collaborative Competitions. Theme of it comes from the fact that, as I said, scientists are sort of wired, they're wound up to work on a project from analysis through model building to getting it published without a concept that maybe if they worked as teams and joined each other to work on insights, that it could be a more productive way of working. So you may have heard Michael Nielsen and the concepts of networked science, or things that Tim O'Reilly and others have talked about for a long time. This is a project that is on breast cancer. It's a project where that breast cancer project is putting out into the public domain new data on 1,000 women who have breast cancer, and they actually were followed, tracked for 10 to 12 years. And all that data on their clinical course is going to be put out, but so is their genetic information about the genes that are expressed in their tumors, and what we call copy number variation, changes in the DNA. And that's going to be put out in a project that we're doing with IBM and with Google. And we're going to put out as a question whether we can build, whether they actually, individual teams, can build classifiers of which women are likely to go on and have metastasis or not have metastasis by using this data set and anything else they can find that they already have access to, and build a classifier that says if you do the following steps, if you take the following algorithms and work on that data, it should be able to predict in other sets of data, other patients, whether they're likely to have aggressive breast cancer. Those solutions, and that competition is going to end in November at the Dream Team competition meeting in November, where the winners will be announced, and those winners will have a direct link to publication. So the winner will be published as the best example that could be given. So I don't know if you have any questions about that collaborative competition session 5. Did you have any questions?
I had a couple comments that might stimulate some more interesting ideas from you. One is that we know a lot of research is gathering data, and here you're starting people off like 10 yards ahead of the starting line with this data. And furthermore, a lot of places keep the data to themselves, and there's this huge data set that's very valuable that they don't share, and now you are encouraging people to share what they've got.
Yes, and the reason we're doing that is that we fundamentally believe that people perform research as if it is a finite game, not an infinite game. There's this beautiful book by Jim Carse called Finite Games, Infinite Games that I recommend people pull out. Kevin Kelly talked about it a couple of years ago in his book, What Technology Wants. And what I mean by this is that these models that we're going to need of disease are well beyond anything we today can build with the data that we have, and it will be decades and hundreds of thousands of patients that we're going to need to build those models. Right now, people use their data as an input to a paper. We think that the data that people generate should be placed instead into a compute space. And you may remember that last year we talked about a wireframe of a compute space called Synapse. Well, this year at the Congress, actually session 1, we're going to show the progress on building that out into alpha and beta test models of Synapse. And I'm bringing this up for, I hope this comes across. In order for people to share, there needs to be a place where people can work with scientific data as if they were building software, as if someone's insights in how to solve something could be put out there and assumed to be a partially formed structure that if others worked on it could be refined, new data could version it just like you version software. So going with that collaborative competition I mentioned in session 5, in session 1, there's going to be a description of the compute space that I think is sorely lacking for medical scientists to share their data, to work together as teams, and for those collaborative competitions, the power is that all those models, people can actually work on them and host them in a compute space, put it in the cloud so other people can see what they've done.
And I imagine, just like with the competitions, there are major institutions working on Synapse with you.
That is correct. We are evolving Synapse with academic institutions such as Mount Sinai, such as Stanford. There are foundations such as this powerful project looking at post-traumatic stress syndrome called OneMind that is interested in using Synapse as a way of sharing data on veterans coming back from Afghanistan. There are foundations in working in neurologic diseases, in cardiovascular diseases that are partners in building out Synapse.
Great. Well, let's move on. You have a few other really exciting projects.
I think last year we talked about a project as a beginning called the Federation. The Federation, for those who hadn't heard that, came from Star Trek, came from the concept that places or colonies, institutions like to be autonomous, but sometimes there are reasons to join together. And here we mean it in a social or legal sense as a way of joining together for the purpose of solving a problem while still being within institutional structures. So the Federation that we started a little over a year ago had groups from Stanford, from UC San Diego, UCSD, Mount Sinai, and has expanded so that these groups that ordinarily would compete with each other, try to get their papers in Nature and beat each other out, joined for projects. And this year, we will give an update on a project that is a fun one on aging. It ends up that the assumption made by the scientists on this project involved the concept that maybe we could look at someone's blood and tell how much they had aged, not necessarily their chronologic age, but their biologic age. And that group will show that the Federation is hard to get started. When it does get started, people do the same type of non-sharing things that they normally do, but sometimes they actually join together. They can work as teams. And so I think the update for those who had heard about the Federation will help. So it's like a progress report on the Federation, which has the good news being some cool science can be done and people can work in cool ways. But I think it should also highlight that this is not going to be easy to build new rewards systems. And I think it's a project in progress, not successful, not necessarily possible to deem as, quote, a success yet.
What does the outcome of research look like when people work through this federation? Is it simply like building a super team that is combined, the combination of several teams at different institutions, or is there something totally different?
Um, the best way to describe the structure of the work is to compare it to the traditional way, which is today the clock, the synchrony in teams is the PI in the lab. And that PI sets the timing, sets the direction, and the postdocs and graduate students sort of are in synchrony around that PI. And when a new project is begun, it's usually one silverback talking to another silverback saying, hey, how would you like to join and collaborate with us? And it's sort of brokered between those silverbacks. In the Federation, the concept, and I think it's beginning to work, is that it does not need that synchronous link between PIs, but that if there's a postdoc, graduate student who is interested in a project, they should be able to pose their idea independent of that upper layer with each other and start in on projects or solutions that actually are not defined by an initial role, but by the roles that emerge from people working together. So if you think of a sort of a social network being a way of gaining synchrony by direct goals, direct actions, instead of preconceived projects, I think that's a better way to think of the behavior among individuals in the Federation. It's like ticking out the clock at the top.
There's like many more progressive companies and even government agencies that are trying to get people at the lower ranks to talk to each other.
Precisely. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. What else do we have to look forward to at the SAGE Congress?
Well, why don't I go to the one that I think is the most radical? There actually is a project, session 10, called Bridge, which basically says, what could we do to join the multiple efforts that are out there to, quote, democratize medicine. Medicine is, and the medical sciences certainly has its share of priests and experts, and it's pretty efficient at doing some things, but some would argue maybe it's time to look at new ways of integrating technologies, of having people work together in different ways. And Bridge is a project that has been initiated with Ashoka, Chitra Krishnam, and the group at Ashoka have worked together with us, funded by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, to build out a way for citizens to pose questions to scientists, to have scientists ask, are there patients and funds and funders to say, hey, I have something I want done, can I pull in scientists, can I pull in citizens to work on it? So Bridge is in some ways a marketplace that allows people to not have predefined roles, I'm the patient or I'm the funder. And one of the projects on Bridge is one called Real Names Parkinson Project. So this seed project that's going on to Bridge is a collaboration with group Patients Like Me, Jamie Haywood's organization.
And
spectacular group
too.
Yeah, and he is, and Bas Bloom, who runs ParkinsonNet in Europe. And working with them, we thought, why don't we get a cohort, a set of patients, 50 to 200 with Parkinson's, and why don't we have those patients who are very interested in having research done on them, to have their data put into the public domain, and most particularly their whole genome sequence and their name. So it's called Real Names Parkinson Project, because we're saying, let's go all the way. Let's put the person's name, let's put their whole genome sequence and anything about them in longitudinal data, and see if that becomes a pool of data, of information that actually scientists could go and look at and then pose questions to that group that says, hey, I want to help you, and see if that is a way of shifting the normal triangle or the loop that goes on between a funder to a scientist and then checking in with the patients.
So the patients, with this brave move, this move that really is revealing all, that's sort of a challenge and almost saying, shame on you if you can't find something to use this for.
That's right. And you may remember that to pull that off sounds like, well, wait a second, aren't you breaking some some rules? And it actually highlights something that is going to be shown at the Congress, a beautiful set of work done by John Wilbanks, who has worked with Dan Vorhaus at the Personal Genome Project. And he's built this project that you can look at on weconsent.us called the Portable Legal Consent, PLC. Mm-hmm. And it says where data, and particular genomic data, should be controlled is by the patient, not by an institution, but patients should control their own data. And to do this, he's built a approach which says, if I give you my sample, if I give you part of me, shouldn't I have my data back? Isn't that my data? And has built a consent form that says, I'll give you my sample, but then I have to have the data from that. So the first iteration of the portable legal consent says, if there's anyone who has genomic information on them and they want to share that with others and make that so it could go into Synapse, so it could be used on Bridge, so it could be part of some sort of competition, that the way to do that is to use portable legal consent to regain the control, or actually have the patient regain that control. And so when you listen to my description of the Real Names Parkinson Project, it allowed me to highlight another part of the Congress, which is John Wilbanks' session 2, I guess it is, talking about portable legal consent.
If I remember correctly, this idea of Wilbanks was one of those fuzzy ideas in a breakout session last year, and it looks like it's been more put together here. Yes.
Yeah. John, actually, I've never seen him as on fire and lit up. And the Kauffman Foundation, a bunch of people have really been helping him with it. Yeah, it's really nice. Okay,
let's run through any other big things going on.
I think the only thing that someone might have remembered last year we were talking about, I'm not going to go through any more than this one, but there was a process of looking at the non-sharing in industry and looking at ways to make some parts of drug discovery more pre-competitive. And there's a project people may remember called ArchtoPOCEM, and that project said for new mechanisms of disease where there's a high risk, why don't we form a public-private partnership where everyone would work together on understanding new mechanisms of disease and have no IP, to actually build good, robust molecules, actually pairs of those good, robust molecules, take them all the way into patients, test their mechanism, and assume that their purpose was to understand whether that target, whether that mechanism was correct, and that industry could follow that information as a partner and build proprietary compounds, but that common stream, that's the key word, common stream in the ArchtoPOCEM would have no IP on it so that anyone could use that information. And that has been a project that has moved from a glimmer in the idea, actually one that it really had been started by Chaz Bountra and Al Edwards at the Structural Genomics Consortium, through to the point where in June there is going to be the next iteration of this in Canada, in Ottawa, looking at public funders and what would be in it for them, for the companies that are beginning to shift from intrigue to interest, hopefully soon to commitment in getting that started.
I think you have to explain what a target is for some of the areas.
Thank you. So a target is a component of a cell, in particular a protein, which scientists look at and go, if I could disrupt that, if I could make a drug that would modify that protein, that might be able to stop that disease. And so target is referred to something you're going to try to disrupt, a protein you want to disrupt. And so a drug like aspirin or a drug like Enbrel or a statin goes and modifies a target in a cell. So when I say target, I'm referring to trying to find the best proteins in the cell that drugs might be made against.
And it seems that the organizations working on this ArchtoPOCEM project are distinguishing between things going on in the human body, parts of nature, which should be all open and for everyone to work with, versus the drugs, which can still be proprietary and you can still make a profit over the next 20 years on them.
If we could do that, whether it's we or the world and adjacent projects could do that, the cost of drugs would go down, the viability of pharma companies would go up, the speed would go up. So I think you've said it very well. Right now, people start filing IP when they can just barely think of a protein that maybe is a target. And then as soon as they make a pretty poor compound that they don't know if it works, they put an IP around that. And all this parallel redundant work goes on, expensive work, because you wouldn't want to share it, because it might be $1 billion molecule, forgetting that 99 out of 100 of those are going to fail, and those hundreds of billions of dollars that go into drug discovery are, to a large extent, like 80% of that is sitting there wasted on things that actually were never very good mechanisms. So let's even say half of it. I think it's more than that, but certainly conservatively, half of that, hundreds of billions, is sitting there wasted on things that people have as a dream, almost like they're hoping they'll win the lottery. This concept of making a pre-competitive space for the targets, so to speak, and having the compounds be ones where the IP is generated, would seem like to people who look at it in a global sense to not be a bad idea.
Well, that's a wonderful vision for the conference or the Congress as a whole. We should mention, in addition to Jamie Hayward, you're going to have Lawrence Lessig. We might as well drop a few more names to...
Exactly. So if you want to talk about some of the people who are going to be there, I'd be glad to. Actually, we're going to get, the Congress is going to start out with a keynote from George Church. And I think many people know he has been an advocate for a long time of how to look at personal genome projects. Then we're going to have David Hauser from UCSC talking on personal genome or personal cancer genomics. As we mentioned earlier, Larry Lessig is going to talk about ingredients for innovations. And then in the morning, our first award for innovation in open networks was won by Adrian Trull, this brilliant young investigator at Carnegie Mellon, who is worked on Foldit and then on Eterna, is going to talk about his work and get that award. And then
was
two
another
other
competition, as I remember.
Yes, it was. The concept of collaborative competitions, I think, in some of their most robust forms, have been driven by Adrian Trull and others working on those projects. And then there's a keynote by Rick Klausner, who was head of the NCI at one time, looking for open innovation and the crisis of translation. And then, as I mentioned, Jamie Haywood, always ready to stretch people who are trying to think beyond even, for me, I find stretching myself is going to give this talk that he says, I don't know how to solve this problem, but we might. And it's all going to be about networked approaches and how can bringing data together help people.
Oh, that's wonderful. Do you have anything else that you want to mention before we wrap up?
No, I think if people know that they can get on, if you just Google Sage in Congress, you'll get to the Congress site and should be able to follow in real time. And people from Pakistan, there's a group of medical students from Pakistan that are psyching up to get on to other places. And then afterwards, the fact that you could actually get on and look at your leisure in the future. And I hope this intersects with what is a very broad and growing movement that I think is going to significantly disrupt that currently closed medical information system.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.